Welcome to the FarmBits podcast.
FarmBits is proudly produced by the Nebraska Digital Agricultural Team and hosted by students at the University of Nebraska.
The FarmBits podcast comes to you each week to discuss the trends, the realities, and the value of digital agriculture.
Through interviews with experts, producers, and innovators from across the agricultural industry, we hope that you step away from each episode with new practical knowledge of digital agriculture technology.
Hello, FarmBits followers, and welcome to another episode of the FarmBits podcast. I am Deepak Gimire.
And I'm Katie Bathke, and we are glad to have you with us as we begin diving into the topic of using spray drones for pest management practices with Dr. Simmer, an assistant professor and extension precision ag specialist at the University.
So I'm originally from India. I have a bachelor's in ag engineering from Punjab Agriculture University, but then I came to the US in 2010 to pursue a master's in biosystems engineering from Auburn University. Then I actually graduated and worked for a sprayer company, Hagee Manufacturing, in Iowa for a couple of years, and then came back and pursued my PhD here at University of Georgia in agricultural engineering again. And since then, kind of been in this faculty position where I'm currently assistant professor and extension precision ag specialist since August of 2020.
Awesome. So kind of going into that, your appointment at the University of Georgia has both a research and extension component. What does that mean, and what does that kind of look like for you in everyday life?
Sure. So I have actually a heavy extension appointment, almost 80% extension and 20 research. But what that really means is that I'm one of the other extension specialists among a group here that work very closely with our extension agents and growers. And we do a lot of and how that feeds our research component is that we do a lot of applied research also, which is directly based on a lot of either questions or issues that the growers are having related to precision ag technologies, data management, or any other technology that's new in the market. And then creating that research-based information we are sharing in our extension job with our extension agents and our growers, so they can convey that to the growers or directly with growers via field days and meetings so they can utilize that on their farm.
That sounds interesting and seems like a lot of work out there. So before we dive into today's topic, can you please briefly share with our audience what actually sparked your interest in academia and particularly precision ag technologies and agriculture research, and how has been your journey to the current position?
Yeah, no, definitely. So as I said earlier, I'm actually from India. So I grew up on a very small family farm back in India, and to some extent, there has been some mechanization, in India right now. But growing up, there was still not a lot of big machinery or any technology. So when I came to the US to pursue my master's, that was the first time, I worked with Dr. John Fulton at Auburn University, who's currently at Ohio State. And he was kind of one of the best precision ag persons right there at that time. And I learned a lot about technology, and not even knowing anything about such technologies that existed here, it was just kind of intriguing to me what we're doing with those technologies in the fields to increase productivity or efficiency or stuff like that. So that was really, something really cool to pursue. And like I said, I did work for the industry a little bit, and that has been a very valuable experience looking from the industry side on the precision ag or the ag technology, So when I came back in the academics to pursue my PhD, I have a lot of good relationship with a lot of industries that we work very closely on our research projects or product testing or new precision ag technologies. And it overall, it just kind of helped me learn more and more about, the precision ag or how the growers are actually using it on their farm and some of the, I want to say, practical, realistic solutions that they're looking for, in today's world.
I think that's a great point on how you talk about how the industry and your choice to go into academia and how you're kind of combining those things is really influential for those growers. And I really like that you brought that out. So you do have a couple different areas in your research, and one of those is precision spray technologies. What kind of work are you doing in that area currently?
Sure. So in my broader context in the precision ag, as extension person, you have to be knowledgeable on almost anything and everything in precision ag today, because a grower can ask you a question on anything ag technology related, right? So I almost work in every technology or precision ag area, and one of those areas is the precision spray technologies. And we've been doing a lot of work, anything from you can say as simple as a nozzle selection on a farm for a pesticide application, evaluating different droplet sizes, spray volume, stuff like that, to even some of the newest stuff, where you see site-specific weed management, where we're only spraying where the weeds are, detecting them either using UAV imagery or some other sensors. And at the same time, I think one of the, I wouldn't say necessarily a new technology on the spray side, but the pulse width modulation systems. So we're also evaluating a lot of response time and for those systems, how growers can effectively utilize those on their farm for precision spraying applications.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of things that can actually help farmer better manage things precisely in their farms. And as we have seen recently, the drones are widely being used for different purposes in agriculture management. So can you please explain to our audience, like, what is the state of the drones used for spray operations in agriculture?
Yeah, for sure. So that's been kind of the hot topics, I would say, recently. Um, So I've been kind of involved in the drone side from the very early on, almost 6, 7 years, when just a simple drone with the RGB camera kind of was introduced to the agriculture side, right? And everybody thought about this is going to change the way we farm and all that, and it kind of happens with every new technology that come into the farming. But I think slowly the technology peaked and came back and saw where it was the best fit, that it is not a grower who's going to fly a drone every day or every week on his farm. It's more like someone who's working with him, a consultant or a company providing precision services. They're using the visual or the RGB camera for crop scouting or in-season crop management or multispectral. So those are kind of being used right now through those type of applications where the dedicated precision companies or people are providing those services to growers, right, for in-season crop management. And then from last couple years, most or so last year, we have also seen this new pesticide applications with drones, what we call drone sprayers, come into the picture. And we're kind of also working pretty heavily on that side, just kind of to see where the technology fits, what the capabilities are. More or so, again, we want to make sure that if someone want to utilize, or they're following the best management practices, but also they're aware about some of the capabilities of the technologies or the applications in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. What do you think are some of the defining problems that spray drones can solve in today's agriculture, and how farmers can be benefited by through this technology?
Yeah, for sure. So we have already kind of starting to see a this technology adoption to a little bit of
Mhm.
good level, I would say, among the growers. So where this really fits in, and this is something I always say is about this, because I have seen some comments about, spray drones are going to replace some equipment and all that. That's not necessarily true. I think that's not completely true in my opinion, that it's just another crop protection tool that's out there in our precision ag toolbox, right?
Mhm.
And the technology is there to complement the ground sprayer and the other aerial applicator applications, right? So this is perfect for spot spraying applications, small acreage, high value crop, specialty crop type applications, and then something else I also say is more or so also for rescue applications, right? So if I had to take example of each one of those scenarios, spot spraying, basically, if you have late season escapes in the field, where it's only more or so 5 acres or so, even less, or some patches in the fields in a big 60-90 acre field, right?
Mhm.
That this is a perfect tool because you don't want to get your 90-foot, 120-foot ground sprayer out to spray the whole field or spray those patches, right? This is a perfect type of application for technology like this, right? Uh, Specialty crops where it's a very small acres but very high value, and you can't get the volume of the canopy penetration of the product or stuff like that in blueberries or other specialty crops or orchards, this is again a kind of good tool for those type of applications, right? And then the third, what I call a rescue application is, and it happens almost every year, is that we have these weather challenges in the middle of the year where it rains too much, we can't get our ground sprayer in the field. And then if you try to get hold of an aerial applicator or crop duster, they are behind, they can't come and spray you this week, it's hard to get on their schedule, and you have something like this sitting that you have to go and make a rescue application. That's totally fine, right? So those are type of the applications this really complements our other, ground or aerial applications. It's not really meant to be spraying large acre and all that, which we started to see a little bit of those commercial applications. But because we're going to learn very soon, or we're already, that we still have a tank size, which the DJI's newest T40 is still 10 gallons, and the battery life is limited anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. You start spraying a 60 or 100 acre field, you're going to do multiple refills, multiple battery chargings, or that. And those are some of the hurdles that we're going to face, and we're going to realize that that's not the best type of fit here in these cases.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Seems like the spray drones will just serve as complementary to the ground sprayers and not just completely replacing them.
Yeah.
As you mentioned that some farms are already being using the spray drone. So as an extension specialist, you may have presented your work on spray drone to farmers. So how has been the response of farmers when they hear about this technology?
So they're really excited about it. I to be honest, I haven't seen as much as interest in any other technology in the last maybe 5 to 10 years than the spray drones, from the growers, just because it's got a cool factor to it. It flies in the drone and it sprays and all that, right? The response from that perspective has been great, but there also has been a lot of questions, right? Because if you think about it, we have been spraying with the ground sprayers forever, and we have so much research available on ground speed, volume, droplet size. You think about, any parameter you talk about, there's a lot of research that has been done to optimize the application with those equipment, right? And this being a very new technology, we don't know a whole lot about, okay, what spray volume really is effective, and how do we know it's effective when we have so many chemistries? So it's almost like testing it with each different application, right? We don't know what the application swath looks like. Is there an optimal application swath? And it's going to vary by one drone to another drone. So there has been a lot of questions like that: the nozzle size, the spray volume, how high do I need to fly, stuff like that. And that's where we're kind of working with doing some of the research on our own, but also working with some other colleagues and even growers to kind of figure out, how we can best utilize this technology.
I think that's so important that you talk about what we don't know still, all these parameters, because you're correct. Like, we have used ground sprayers for so long. And so the drone, I could definitely see where this is an exciting factor. And it's going to be really interesting to see what it does in the future. So kind of continuing on talking about drones, What do you think are things that should be considered for a successful use of spray drones for effective pest management?
Sure. So it kind of goes back to I think one thing or a few things we highly recommend is, before you even buy one, right, as a grower, unless you are planning to offer like commercial applications or something, then you have a goal in mind where you want to go with it. But if as a grower you're thinking about it, or even as a commercial applicator, you got to see where is it going to help me on my farm, right? Do you get in those type of situations every year where it rains too much, or there are parts of the field or areas of the field, especially close to a tree line, or where you can't get with the ground sprayer, you can't have an aerial applicator, and this drone would make a perfect sense to spray, right? So see where the technology will fit on your farm before you even make a decision. I'm going to go this, because if not, then you're probably just buying a toy for yourself to play with, and you may not find a fit, and it may sit in your shed or somewhere on the farm. That's the first question. And then I think those application parameters is a big thing, that you can't assume that you can just put any chemical in it and spray at a 2-gallon rate and it's going to work just fine, right? So you gotta do a little bit of testing on your own to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And in that case, the application swath also matters, right? You, in most cases, it's easier to think that, oh, I can just fly a little bit higher and it's going to cover more ground. That's not true. We're also reducing coverage and how far the material's going. So you could easily end up with these streaks in the field where the material didn't get, and right under the drone, you may have a lot of coverage. You may get a good disease control or whatever you're trying to control. So know what your swath is, what volume works for you for that type of application, how high, or what's the good optimal height that you need to fly at, so you are maximizing the application but minimizing the drift. That is one of the also biggest concerns, because you think about it, our ground sprayers only operate about 20-24 inches from the crop or the target, and we already have drift issues with ground sprayer. We're talking about a drone 8 to 10 feet above the target. Think about the distance there is and the potential for all that spray to go to a neighbor's field or somewhere, right? We want to do a better job of controlling drift than increasing the risk or potential for that with days. So there's a lot of things to keep in mind, as you're doing it and learning to be able to successfully use the technology on the farm.
Yeah, of course. I think as more research are being conducted, there would be more knowledge, and farmers can be benefited out of those research outputs. Previously, you mentioned that some of the challenges with spray drones adoptions are battery life and tank capacity. Would you like to add some more potential constraints for adoption of the spray drones?
Yeah, so I think besides that, one of our biggest challenges, and maybe I want to say in a good way for some reason, is the rules and the regulations and the certification, right? That's a big deal, because you can't just, nobody can just go to a dealer, buy a spray drone and start doing it. You gotta do it all legally in a way that you are able to fly it and use the pesticides. Our rules and regulations were relatively less stricter, or they were getting a lot easier for our normal drones, where you just have a camera on it and you're just flying it for crop scouting. There was even recreational flying that you can operate under, right? And those under part 107. But when we're talking about, those rules only apply to the drones that weighed less than 55 pounds, right? We're talking about these drones that could go anywhere easily over 55 when you're talking about, water and the density and the weight of the whole solution in the tank itself. And there's a lot heavier regulations that apply, which need you to apply for a lot of exemptions, because you are dispensing chemicals with the drone now. So that is one of the things, and that process right now is taking anywhere from 8 months to a 12-month time period. It's all available on the FAA website. I think that is one of the biggest. So we want to make sure we're encouraging growers or everybody who's interested to look into the process. So make sure they're doing all this legally and under the following the rules and regulations. So that would be one of the big things that will prevent anybody just not to go and get a drone and start doing it, right? Which is also, like I said, in a good way, because technically we are in the airspace, right? When we're off the ground. And FFA is really working hard to actually making some of these restrictions less restrictive. So the technology can be, but they also want to make sure that everybody's again doing it in a safe manner. You're not just making any decisions that could cause any major issues or damage, in the airspace kind of things. And then from the drone capabilities itself, right? Is we're gonna again, you think about, we got anywhere from a 500-gallon tank to 1,000 or 1,200-gallon tank on the bigger ground sprayers, right? Drones are never gonna get to that level. The biggest right now, like we said, on a T40 is about 10.5 gallon, right? We will probably see it increasing in weight, but that is also going to increase the size of the drone and the battery capacity and all that. So I think we will always be kind of limited by that scenario of the tank and the battery life. And that's why it makes that technology a really good fit for spot spraying or specialty crop, small acreage applications, because you don't want to spend all day just refilling and recharging or putting the batteries in and out of the drone. So those are some of the, I think, that would be the big challenges. When we solve the problem of a battery life, like if we can find a way to increase the battery life where now you can fly it for 30 minutes or something, or 20 minutes, and we find out that even the small volumes like 2 gallons or something would work good for some chemicals, we can potentially see this expanding to a little bit more acreage.
It's really interesting to think about it in that concept and like where it could possibly be in terms of what the parameters are and that we know right now. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the biggest challenges you have faced with your research and how you overcame them in your time of extension or being in the industry?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the precision ag or technology research, it's very cool. It very feels great to be a part of, because the technology is always exciting and everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the challenges we have is not every ag technology in the market today provides an economic return, right? And when a grower is making a decision about something, he's always looking at, where is this going to make me money? Or if I adopt it, how is this going to make me profitable or more productive on my farm, right? And it's really hard to put some of those numbers to technology in a way, because doing an economic analysis on a lot of precision ag technologies, it's almost like a little bit complicated and challenging task. It can be done, but it need a lot of like having an economist on board, having people who understand where, and sometimes technology just provides, a value instead of any return. It's just that it's making your job easier. It may not be bringing any dollars back to you, right? How do you say that's worth $5 return or a $10 return, right? So there's a lot of those type of advantages that you can't quantify well enough in some cases, to do that. And the best we do is in our program, like anything is, to test the technology to see what the real benefits are. And then we also have a lot of these progressive growers, who are the very early adopters of those technologies. And they are almost in a way, a very good way of testing those technologies in the real world scenarios that they're constantly, giving feedback on it. Does it work or not? Is it bringing any value to their farm? And something good about a grower is, I always say this, especially on the extension perspective, is he's going to tell everybody if he really likes it and he uses it. And he's also going to tell everybody if he really hates it or don't like it, right? So you get a lot of that information of if something works or not, and how do you adapt or use that information in our program to kind of encourage growers for technology adoption or, towards that. And I always say, precision ag is, to me, is almost like this toolbox, right? That we have a lot of different tools in there, some basic tools and some advanced tools. It almost like that everybody's going to need some basic tools, a wrench, pliers, screwdrivers, stuff like that, which could be like in precision ag and auto steer, GPS, section control, stuff like that, right? Not everybody's going to need every specialty tool in there. It's more like a fit on your farm kind of thing. And that's where the growers need to see, will this new advanced technology fits on my farm? Is it bringing value? Do I need it? Or it's not, and then I need to look at something else to make my operation more productive or profitable.
That's awesome. I love that analogy.
Yeah, of course. Like farmers, as you mentioned, like some early adapters can help or communicate the words out if they are successful or if they are not, if the technology is not successful. So on that context, what do you believe like is the role of the public sector, particularly academia, in developing this kind of precision ag technologies and preparing farmers for a transition to using these technologies in their operations?
No, I think we have being in academia, in the public sector especially, I think we have a pretty big role that everybody's filling, in their respective positions. And one of those roles is, again, like I said, informing growers about about the benefits of the technologies, but also what do they need to consider before adopting these technologies. Because, one of our job as in academia is we are unbiased, right? We're not making money from selling any one type of technology or not, so we can make those type of decisions easier when we try to compare and evaluate different technologies against each other. We can provide them that unbiased research-based information that either we found a value of using it or we did not find it, right? We can be that honest with them all the time about those type of things. And I think that matters a lot to a grower, because I don't think this is another something I read somewhere about precision ag. If we had to look back 10 years ago versus today, 10 years ago we were still pretty early on the technology phase, where there were a lot of sensors, technology, and all that coming in the agriculture, right? Where a lot of development were going on. I don't think we have a technology development issue today. There's a lot of technologies out there today, right? We actually don't have a technology development or adoption problem. We have a technology implementation problem, because everybody's just trying to create more and sell more without us really thinking how to effectively implement those on a farm or with a grower, right? And I think that's where also us in academia or the public sector fits in well, is, when we not just evaluate and test it, but also do a lot of on-farm trials with the growers in their fields. Is if there's something they're not completely utilizing in a better ways, we can kind of help them get the most benefit out of on their farm, right? At the same time, be a little bit unbiased in providing that information to them.
I love that, how you talk about the implementation and what it can look like. So we're going to segue that into a little bit of, what do you think the future of using spray drones, especially for pest management in agriculture, might look like in 5 to 10 years?
So I think I'm gonna stick with my gut feeling here from what I have seen with the previous drone industry, because what happened was when initially the drones with just the cameras and sensors kind of came in the ag, everybody was super excited and they were just putting it to use in every operation or application, right? And we had a lot of these expectations. So it was almost like we started here, we went on a bell curve, like on the peak, right, where everybody was trying to use it for something, and then we kind of came down, and then it was a pretty much flat where it found its fit, right, in ag, where a grower's not going to go and fly it every day or process the data himself and all that. We learned those type of things, right?
Mhm.
And it became a perfect tool for a lot of crop consultants or precision companies that are providing precision services for in-season management, stuff like that. They're the big heavy users because they also have the agronomic and the technology expertise on how to analyze data, create maps and stuff like that, right? So I think we're gonna probably see a very similar trend with spray drones here, that where we are early on that uphill climb of let's try to kind of do anything and everything, right? And we will probably see this year and next year a little bit more use or technology development or a bigger tank size, a different type of spray platforms coming in the market and all that. But I think we're gonna go up there, get on a peak, and then slowly come down where it's gonna find its fit in the ag, right? Where we'll again, my kind of feeling is that we'll see some of this commercial application kind of side taking off, because it does require you have a pretty good setup, where you just don't have one drone, you have a multiple drones, you have a system for easier refill, recharge, stuff like that. And it's almost at that point, you're not going to just serve your farm with that. You're almost doing some sort of commercial business where you're profitable, and you have also thought about or have all the operations figured out where this fits well and how can I provide grower a service, right, when he needs it. So I think that's where we will see, but it will definitely progress from here, but we will find some very unique applications, and I think that's where we'll kind of see it heading in the future.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Like as you mentioned, the use of the drones with sensors that gained hype, and now like they are stationed at particular interest, research interest or application interest. So hopefully same would be, and then would maybe the farmers or the technologists or the consultants can make the best use of these spray drones in the near future. So as we are about to wrap of like we talked a lot about spray drones, basically from research aspects to application aspects, constraints, and all those things. Where can our listeners go to learn more if they want to about anything we have discussed today?
Yeah, so I would point out internet, right? But make sure you are, what we talked about earlier. Yes, there's a lot of companies out there today offering spray drones, go check their websites if you're looking for one, but also at the same time, look for some articles, blogs, or information from university personnel, right? That they have maybe um, you know, written on the uses and the applications or the capacity or the limitations, but at the same time, rules and regulations, because that's where you'll find a lot of, unbiased information, right? That these are what are available. These are the type of platforms available. You need to consider this. So there's a lot of information. We do have a UGA Extension Precision Ag blog where I think we did a little article last year on the same. And there's a lot of information even in some of the magazines and news outlets today, since it's being one of the the hot topics these days. But make sure you're not just reading a one industry company or a certain service provider website to gain more information. You're checking a lot of different sources so you get all the information about it.
I think that's really important. Thank you for sharing that. We have a tradition on the FarmBits podcast. We like to ask our guest for some words of wisdom or a piece of advice for any listeners who may be interested in implementing precision ag technologies. Do you have any advice for our listeners today?
For sure, I think it's the same advice for what I have implemented or learned over the years working in precision ag, and it's just fresh in my mind because we had a big field day here or a meeting here yesterday, and I was talking to some growers and they were trying to adopt some new precision planting technologies or advanced planting technologies, so as to say. And it's just being patient with technology because we always know this, that there are some days it's not going to work, you won't like it, and it needs a lot of patience for you to kind of really see the benefit from it, especially during the implementation phase, right? That it needs that. And then my other one is also, and I think it's for the majority of the people, but maybe not the early or early adopters, is when you're looking at technology, I always say you want to let the technology mature a little bit before you make a decision on implementing on your farm, right? Because there has been a lot of technologies come and go, and not every technology was the fit in there. So if anything has been very well tested out, matured, and people have seen benefits, and academia or university personnel has done a little bit of research and have some information on it, then it's always better. Like, don't jump on it the very first year if you're still, trying to get into the precision ag and all that, because the first year, 2 or even 3, sometimes is just testing out if this thing's really a good fit or not, overall, even in the ag side. So being patient, look for a little bit of mature technologies, if you're still kind of, trying to adopt some of those technologies. Where you're not on the early adopter side, because those are the guys a lot of times which first year, second year, and we also get a lot of good feedback from them, like I said.
Thank you very much to Dr. Simmer for taking the time to join this episode of the FarmBits podcast. It's really exciting to learn about the interesting aspects of the spray drones, challenges in adoptions, and what the future of spray drones may look like. One of my favorite parts of this episode is learning about the potential use of spray drones for emergency rescue in the field, where the use of ground sprayer is not feasible.
I would have to agree. However, I really enjoyed his insight on the importance of implementing precision ag technologies to fit within your operation. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we look forward to sharing another digital ag story with you next week on FarmBits.
Thank you for taking the time to join us today on the FarmBits podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts to be informed about the latest content each week.
We welcome your feedback, so if you have any comments or questions for us, please reach out to us over email, on Twitter, or in the reviews section of your favorite podcast platform. Our contact information can be found in the show notes.
We would like to thank Nebraska Extension for their support of this podcast and their commitment to providing high-quality informational material to members of the agricultural community in Nebraska and beyond.
The opinions expressed by the host and guest on this podcast are solely their own and do not reflect the views of Nebraska Extension or the University of Nebraska-Lincoln.
We look forward to you joining us next week for another episode of FarmBits.